and welcome back to another edition of the War Eagle Production Spotlight. I'm Jake Mays, producer, live operations. I'm joined by Daniel DePoe, who is our assistant broadcast engineer, but also directs our broadcasts and our video boards. And today we are honored to be joined by Morgan Thomas. Morgan, first of all, thank you for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me. It's so great to hear your titles. You guys have grown up so much.
We've gone from expression operator and camera and TD to producers and directors. So it's been kind of nice. Yeah. The thing I always find curious, because there's so many different ways. How did you find out about War Eagle Productions?
So I was in a history class in Haley Center, and I got an email on my phone, which I definitely did not have out during class. And it was like the first 100 people who respond to this email can be added to a television class that is partnered with the SEC network. And I was like, that sounds fun. That sounds like it might be something I want to do. So I emailed this person back and it wouldn't go through because there's no service in the Haley Center. So I excused myself from class, went to the bathroom, actually went outside on one of the many balconies and sent this email. And I remember after class, I called my mom and I was like, Auburn has this really cool thing going on. We have this live production department that's going to partner with the SEC network, and students are going to get to do television. And my mom's like, Morgan, you are a chemistry and math double major trying to go to med school. What are you doing adding other stuff to your plate? And I was like, it's fine, Mom. It'll be an elective. I'll get it out of the way. It's going to be great. And then I started and I never left. And I definitely did not go to med school.
But, it's funny because that's how I found out about WEP too. And I think so far doing all this, me and you are the only two people that have mentioned an email. So it's just so funny that that's how that got going. So obviously you started 2014. Here you did camera, you TD'd, you directed a little bit. Kind of what drew you into the TD and the technical side?
So I really like to know how things work. It was kind of the same brain path that had me going pre-med and thinking I wanted to go to med school. I love pulling things apart and understanding how they work. And I think my very first show, I gripped camera for our football shows. And then I slowly kind of got into the control room and came in on some days that I wasn't really scheduled to be on a shift. And I thought it was fascinating how the heartbeat of the show is the control room, but everything has to go through this one person. They're the last line of defense. They build the entire show and they pretty much bail everyone else out, and it's the TD. And I was like, this is really cool. This is a big piece of technology that I would have to learn. This is just absolutely fascinating to figure out how it works and how to be that person that pretty much controls everything you see on television. And so I was lucky enough that they were like, sure, try it. We were still in that experiment phase of War Eagle Productions where they were like, yeah, you want to try it? Go ahead and try it. You're not going to burn anything down.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I loved it so much that I just never got out of the chair, and I wouldn't let them take me out of the chair. And even when I got to ESPN, I was like, you're not taking me out of this chair. This is the most fun thing I've ever done, getting to build something new every time you sit down in the chair.
One of the things you had to build too is the football board. The first 2 years that was going in. I mean, let's talk about that process.
I think that would probably be the first time in my life where I realized what anxiety was. And it was great because there was such a good support system around to make sure everything worked. But at the same time, nothing worked. I remember we came in for rehearsals that 3 days before the first football game when we were going to fire this thing up. And there were 7 panels in the middle of it that wouldn't turn on. Nobody could figure out what was wrong with it. They had to bring in the company that built it. And it was just one of those things where I was like, this is one thing I can't control. And I like to be able to control all the things. If there's going to be a mistake, it needs to be my mistake. It doesn't need to be that the actual video board won't fire on. And so I think it was great because it was like drinking out of a fire hose. It was the fastest I've ever learned. It was definitely the most I've ever learned at one time. And at the same time, every single show, something broke. I don't think anyone in the stadium could have told you that, but we all knew like half the time the touchdown animation wouldn't run, or it would go halfway across the board, or we'd get to the third quarter and 4 other random panels would turn off in the board. Or we'd go to take a replay and I had to tie both switchers together in order to run, like both control rooms switchers, in order to have enough room to run what had to run on that board. And sometimes the other one would fall asleep and it wouldn't fire. And it was a lot. It was a lot. But it was the most fun thing I ever TD'd, even after leaving, was definitely that first year of that board for football.
Yeah, it was nuts. I also remember having to sit next to you for a game and just watch it my first time. And like, goodness, I do not know how I'm about to do this.
Well, I was about
Yeah.
to say, I remember she TD'd the whole 2015 season, and then we're getting ready for the first game of 2016, and you're sitting beside her, and I'm like, who is this? Like, what's happening? I don't know who this kid is.
Yeah, it was a crazy time. That's when you had just announced you're about to go to ESPN, correct? For the
Mm-hmm.
first time. So talk a
Yeah.
little bit about your start at ESPN and then eventually the transition over to Turner where you are now.
So I got an internship at ESPN pretty much just through the people I knew from War Eagle Productions. I think that one of the most important things about this business especially is who you know. A lot of times that'll get you in a door, and then what you know will kind of get you the job and can take you forward. But we made so many connections through War Eagle Productions, and so many people, like once you had somebody believe in you, they were vouching for you, they were constantly introducing you to people. And I eventually met enough people at ESPN that I got the internship. And when I went up for
Wow.
my internship, I think that was the first time that I started to lay eyes on the director chair. And I was like, maybe I might want to do this. Maybe I like the idea of having more in a production. So a lot of times as the TD, you would find out maybe a day before, maybe a few days before, kind of what you were doing. And a lot of it was rinse and repeat once you get into the television world, not War Eagle Productions, but once you get into the television world, a lot of it's rinse and repeat. You sit down, the board's already made. You might add a few things, you might change a few things, but not a whole lot. The director, on the other hand, plans all week for a show, then sits down, controls every decision that's made, every creative decision, every editorial decision. It has to go through the director before it even makes it to the TD to go on air. So I started to be fascinated with a lot of the like before show prep that you don't really see as a TD. And I was like, I really like this. I really like this. So on my last day of my internship, they offered me a job as a TD. And I was like, yes, right now I want a TD, but I was like, how can I be a director? And they looked at me and they were like, what are you talking about? They're like, well, we'll worry about that later. We'll worry about that later. Like, we're not having this conversation right now. And I was like, that's fine. So I TD'd basketball for a while, college basketball for a while for ESPN. And then I asked him again. I was like, hey, how do I become a director? And they're like, well, that's not really the path here. We don't really slide TDs over like we used to into director chairs. TDs are TDs. And you're a great TD.
Wow.
Like, we're going to make sure you get all the big shows as you continue on. We're going to make sure that you reach all the levels you want to reach in your career, but you're not going to be a director. And I was like, okay, I hear you. How can I be a director? And they were like, well, you're going to have to go be an AD. And I think they told me that thinking she's not going to do it. And then I want to say it was like 4 or 5 months later, an AD job opened in Charlotte at SEC Network, and I applied for it. Everyone thought I was crazy. I took it. Everyone thought I was crazier. I took a pay cut. I took a opportunity cut, kind of a job cut in a way.
Yeah, I mean, you're at the mothership at one point.
Yeah. And I had gone out and shadowed Monday Night Football right before I did this as well. And I was like, no, I think I really want to be a director. I'm going to try it, right? I was like, worst case scenario, I go back to being a TD, right? Like, there's no lose-lose here, right?
Take the risk.
So I got to SEC Network as an AD, and I was like, I hate this job. I don't want to count back from 10. I hear myself in my sleep. I was like, you don't really get to be involved in much. You kind of sort of are like the editor prior to the show. You have to go through all the graphics and you have to go through all the tapes and you have to go. And I was like, this is the definition of busy work for more important people. I was like, I don't like this job. I don't think I can do this job. I think I want to tap out. And I took some time because I was like, do I want to go back and be a TD? Maybe I'm just not an AD at the right time. Maybe I need to go back to Bristol and be an AD instead. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And one of the directors at SEC Network called me one day and she was like, hey, I want to introduce you to somebody. There's an AD job open at Turner Sports. And I was like, the basketball network? And she was like, they do more than basketball. I was like, I don't think so. So, and I wasn't a basketball fan. I grew up a college fan. I, live, eat, and breathe Auburn. I was like, what am I going to do going and doing the NBA? I'm like, I'm out of my league. I don't know what's going on. The only players I know are either so insanely famous or they came from like the college ranks. I was like, this is not a good idea. She was like, well, they do March Madness. And I was like, yeah, for the month of March, like the other 11 months for NBA. I was like, this is not a good idea. But she was like, just go meet them. So I came down to Turner. I met my current boss, who is, VP of Studio Directing, I think is his title. Steve Fiorello, who also directs Inside for the last 20-something years. Wow. So I realized very quickly when I got in the building that I was around a group of creatives that launched what I would consider is probably one of the best sports shows out there. And I was like, okay, maybe this isn't about being an AD. Maybe this isn't about what you're doing in your job. Maybe it's about who you're around. Maybe you need to change up what has become kind of like a car wash of rinse and repeat at work. And Steve was like, we talked, we chatted. He asked what I'd done. He came from ESPN. A lot of people at Turner have come from ESPN. So he was like, I don't really care about your resume. Like, I know you're a competent, functioning human being. I was like, gee, thanks. And
what a compliment.
He was, we kept talking for a while and he wanted me to come freelance. And I was like, I don't really want to get fired. I don't know how this works. And eventually he called me one day and he was like, hey, I have a full-time job. It's an AD job. It's yours if you want it, but you have to start in 10 days. And I lived in Charlotte and I was like, okay, we're gonna try it. Like, what's the harm? Again, like, just like going to the SEC Network, I was like, let's just try something new. And it was the greatest decision I have made thus far in my career. My title is AD. I'm currently directing. I have worked on shows where you come in and 5 hours before a show, they go, we want to hang Shaq from the ceiling. And I'm looking at the lighting grid being like, I don't even think it's rated for half this weight. And they're like, figure it out. You got 5 hours. And I'm like, wow. So I finally found a place where the creative was every day. It was a lot more like being a director, but everybody was a director. Like, if the runner had an idea, the producer would be like, come on, bring it. Like, let's talk through this. Like, and I'm like, holy cow, like, this is just, I've never operated like this. You're walking down the hallway and talent wants to know how your day went. And I'm like, why are you talking to me? Like, this is weird. And so it was just a totally different culture. It was a totally different way to learn. And I don't feel like, I think a lot of times people are like, well, you're still an AD. And I'm like, in my title, yes, but in everything else I get to do at work, I mean, I'm not even sure what you would call my title because of how much we get to touch and how much we get to do. And we just launched a property where we have total control. There's no league to answer to. We make all the rules. And let me tell you, I thought that was really cool until you get in a meeting where nobody downs ideas. So then there's just 9 million ideas. And they're like, well, we'll just make all the ideas. And then when we get there, we'll use what we use. And like 3 of them get in. And you're like, why did we spend so much time on this? This is exhausting. But it's been so much fun. I absolutely love it. I think that it was the perfect move for me and for my learning and for where I want to be, because now I'm directing. I'm doing exactly what I wanted to do, before. I just didn't realize this was how I was going to get there.
Well, it just shows how important risk taking is. I mean, not only in the day to day in a show, but I mean, multiple life changing moves. You're 10 days to make a move that big is nuts.
I think I worked 10, so I gave them my 2 weeks notice, and I was like, so there's like a little bit of a hiccup, like, can it be 10 days? And the way my schedule worked, it ended up being that 10 days was like my next off day. And so it was fine. Like, they were like, ESPN was totally cool with it. And I remember finishing a show. I had packed a bag from my apartment. I drove to Atlanta. I got up the next morning and I started work. And it was the last week. Yeah, the last week of February. So I don't think I moved from Charlotte until July of that year. I had to keep my apartment because I couldn't get back up there. We were working 17-hour days every single day of March for March Madness. And then we had like a 2-week kind of sort of what we would consider slow week. And then all of a sudden playoffs started. And so we were working every day, not quite as long, but every day until Memorial Day weekend. And I was trapped. Like, I'd never done remotes in this sense where like you traveled the whole, like, the show and the game, and and we're still trying to hang Shaq from the ceiling when we get there, and I'm just like, what are we doing? Like, they're like, oh yeah, I mean, it's just something new every day, like, we're gonna do something crazy. And you really can. Like, I can walk into the office. My first year there, I walked into the office and I was like, I'm gonna take Reggie and Kristen to Netherworld and I'm gonna film it, kind of like Ellen DeGeneres does or whatever. And they were like, great idea, have at it. Well, have at it meant it's all yours. You handle it. You do everything for it. And so again, it was this really cool way to learn because nobody was going to let me fail and put something bad on air. But they were also like, you got to figure it out yourself. I don't have time to deal with it. It's a great idea, but you have to deal with it. And so it was a lot like, yeah, it was a lot like War Eagle Productions, where Michael would sit me down and be like, I want the switcher to do this, figure it out. And he's like, and I would go in his office and he'd be like, you haven't worked on it long enough. Don't ask me a question. And I was like, okay. But it was the best way to learn because I figured out all the wrong ways to do things very quickly, and all the one right way that you just stick with and you never forget because you had to go through all the wrong steps. Nobody told you the right way to do it. So Turner's a lot like War Eagle Productions.
We're used to February around here being awful. You just cross over. But now I would assume that's how March is for you. So kind of explain your March and April. Like what's the daily or weekly like schedule like for March Madness?
So let's go non-COVID.
Okay.
Let's go normal.
Yeah.
COVID was weird because we ran everything out of our studios, so it took the travel out of it.
Okay.
But that's never going to happen again. So a normal March, we have NBA games on Tuesdays and Thursdays at that point. We pick up Tuesday nights, the last Tuesday of January, whatever that date is. So then we have the first week will be Tuesday and Thursday, and then the next week starts March Madness. Well, we have more networks than CBS. It's a partnership, but it's on CBS, but then TNT, True TV, and TBS are ours. So the way that it works is CBS on a normal year handles CBS, and we handle all 3 other networks. So in the first 2 days, like the first 4, it's pretty easy. It's 2 double headers, 2 nights in a row. Like, it's an NBA night. It's the first 4 days of like the real tournament that are crazy. We will touch 32 games. We will do a pregame show on all 3 networks at different times. So it's like a repeat. We will handle every halftime and every tweener, which is dictated based on what time the game ends and how long that arena has to turn over for like the next group or the next teams to come out. And then they have a very specific warm-up period. This year there was a cleaning period, so it made it even longer. So our shows and our days were even longer. And those 4 days are pretty rough. Turner actually puts us in a hotel next door so that we actually can get like a power nap, maybe 2, maybe 3 hours of sleep between getting off the air and getting back on the air the next morning. And you do that for 4 days in a row. And by the end, you don't remember your name. You don't like 2 years ago I couldn't find my phone for like 45 minutes. I was like, where's my phone in this building? I had stuck it. I was making copies of rundowns. I had put it in with the paper and I had jammed our printer and broke our printer. And I was like, I mean, March Madness. Like I have to have a pass on this. Like nobody's brain functions by the end of it. But then after that, it goes back to fairly routine, like the Sweet 16. It just feels like a really light day. And then CBS handles the Elite Eight, so we get 2 days off, which are like the best days. And then we all travel to wherever Final Four is that year. And so the way that it works in the current situation is our team will handle all studio and CBS handles all the game stuff. We'll also handle everything surrounding it. So like last year I did the Miley Cyrus concert. In normal years, there's a big festival on the off day outside. We handle all of that. We handle all of the in arena like excess that goes on. We handle all the live events aspects of it. We handle the security. We handle the talent. We handle pretty much all of it except the game, which CBS handles.
CBS just walks in. Hey.
Yeah, a little bit. So it's been, we will also on years where the finals are on TBS instead of CBS, we will also do game casts where we have production trucks and entire production teams with cameras that just follow that team. So it's like it's kind of like Auburn. Like it's a way to have like a biased show. So if people want to watch it, we also bring out our Twitter crew and we'll do a Twitter show. We'll have social. Bleacher Report will be there. Sometimes House of Highlights will put on an event. I think it's the biggest event we do. And from that standpoint of like all hands on deck, there's hundreds of Turner employees that come out. Whereas like a normal game, there's like, I don't know, just a regular NBA game. There's probably 7 of us that travel from the office to go out. Yep. And then you get like 2 days of sleep and then NBA playoffs start. And next year we have hockey and baseball starting on Tuesday nights, opening weeks. So it's going to be interesting. We're hiring pretty much in every department.
You go from a COVID season where you're trying to figure that out, and then now, we're adding 2 different, sports. Got it.
Yes. And I thought last season was crazy. Like when we all got out of the bubble and we had to remember how to be like normal functioning human beings again, I was like, we have like a month and then we're going to have to start NBA again. And like, this is crazy. And I got off the match. I get off the plane and my boss calls me and he's like, hey, we got to go over like the MLB set. I'm like, the MLB set? It's July. That's in October. Why do we have to go over the MLB set right now? Like, why don't we have a break anymore? He's like, there are no more breaks. We're done with breaks. There's no more summers. I was like, oh, okay. This is good. So right now, off time is spent launching hockey and working on our MLB redesign for this year. We're also redesigning our NBA look come October and launching stuff for the 75th anniversary of the league. So it's going to be a crazy, crazy year. So like I said, we're hiring. If you know anybody, please reach out. It's going to be great.
Well, that's what's crazy to think about. I mean, you talk about reaching out, and obviously I think this is a great place to look for candidates. I mean, thinking back to when you were here, name some of the people who you were in class with in the original class, and then just kind of how that helped push you the whole time you were here at Webb.
Oh, absolutely. I think when you find people who champion you in your circle, like there's nothing that makes it easier to be really good at your job. You want to learn more, you want to be better, you always want to be a part of a team that everybody's, working really hard, but also wanting everyone else to succeed. Mm-hmm. So Torian was a really big help when I left, and he's one of our like every week NBA camera operators. He is on one of the higher packages for college football as a camera operator. Like he's doing amazing things out there. Ashley, when she went to ESPN, she was kind of one of the people that got my foot in the door when I wanted to come on full time. And I think she's still up at Bristol. Mm-hmm. And it was just so crazy to watch all these people go out and know that you had people out in the industry that you could reach out to, even people maybe that you didn't know personally. Maybe they left before you, maybe they came after you, but it was still like, I can always feel like I can pick up the phone and call them when it comes to work for any kind of question or help, or hey, do you know this person, or hey, do you have any idea about this opportunity that's coming down, or have you heard about this? And it's really nice to have a network that's outside of your own company.
For sure.
I think, and we've talked to a lot of people about this, but you really felt like it was a team. Like you could, each aspect of the show, as it should be, what everybody relied on one another. But a lot of what I enjoyed was after the fact, after the game, you sit around and have a meeting, but then you go eat food and all that. So, I mean, obviously that still goes on today, but I feel like that's what helped us become who we were, because we cared so much about one another that we wanted to see everyone succeed, not just at WEP, but once they went out. So I think it's so cool just to see where everybody else is at right now. That really started on that ground level of Oregon Productions.
For sure. I think some of the best ideas came out of those days. They didn't come out of production meetings. They came out of like when you were just talking about random stuff, or you were watching a game that was completely unrelated to Auburn, and there was an idea and you were like, well, what if we took it one step further? What does that look like? And how that kind of like would develop throughout the week. So it's the off, I don't want to consider it like off time, but the hours that weren't tied specifically to work, I feel like are where you make your best connections and some of the best ideas come out of.
It's gonna be tough for me to ask this because you obviously got two, trophies that stand out behind you. You've worked on something like the match. You've worked with the NBA for as long as you have already. What's probably been like the most, I don't say standout memory, but something that you'll never forget, even if you do end up leaving sports?
That's an actually kind of an easy answer. As far as a standout moment, when COVID hit last year, I don't even remember what year it
Who
is anymore.
knows?
Last March, I was in Milwaukee for a game the next day, and my phone vibrates off the nightstand. Like, I mean, it's just like losing it. And I'm like, what is going on? And everyone's like, turn on your TV. And my producer's calling me and he's like, Rudy Gobert has COVID. And I'm like, what is going on? And they're like, we're getting on a plane and going home. And I was like, what do you mean getting on a plane and going home? Like, we have a game tomorrow. They're like, no, we don't. Nothing. The world is ending. We're all going home. I was like, okay. I had been home about a week. And everyone, like, nobody's working, right? This is the point in the world which, outside of our industry, everyone was home. Every office was closed. No one was working. And I get a phone call, and they're like, hey, I think we're going to try to do the match 2. We're going to move it up. And I'm like, in our backyards? Like, what do you mean? What do you mean we're going to do this? Like, what are you talking about? And it was amazing to watch people come together. It was all of us trying to figure out Zoom, all of us trying to figure out how to make our dogs stop barking. And we put on an event. We were the first event back on television during COVID. We raised $20 million for COVID relief. It was all charity based. There was so much heart that went into it. The players were amazing. They wanted to be a part of it. They wanted to help. We found so many ways to come together and try to support a community that was completely falling apart, and nobody had the bandwidth anymore to watch news. And for most people, escape was sports, and there were no sports on. There was nothing to watch. Television shows were even going off the air with nothing new coming on because all of the production companies had to stop filming. And so there was no escape from COVID, and we were able to pull it off completely safely. There was no playbook here, right? How do we get everyone there when planes aren't flying? How do we keep everyone safe once we get there? Testing was still like a thing, but it wasn't like normal unless you were actually sick. So like, how do we keep people safe? How do we test people? How do we put people who live on different sides of the country in a production truck together? How do we have to put in different air vents? What are the masks used? Like, all of that was unknown. And then how do we put all these people in Florida at a hotel when everything was still closed? You couldn't go out to eat. You couldn't even pick up takeout in most places in Florida at that point. So how do we feed everybody? So it was a bigger event than just putting on a production. And we were so proud of it, and we were so excited, and we'd done it safely, and we get to the day and it storms like I've never seen in my entire life. And I just wanted to sit down and cry. And they're like, do we postpone it? Do we move it to tomorrow? What do we do? It had been sunny all week, of course, right? Weather had been perfect. We had all this footage of the players playing the day before. This was the first use of live drone, and we had recorded all this stuff. And I was like, we don't even have scenics. Like I don't, everything in the tape machine like world might as well be deleted because it was sunny outside. I was like, what do we do? What do we do? And we were all sitting there, and they were like, do we push it back? Do we this? Well, it stopped lightning about an hour before we were supposed to go on air. And one of our executives looked at the 4 players and said, what do you want to do? And all 4 of them looked at us and they were like, we're going out there and we're raising money. And they were like, we've played in worse. We've seen worse. You know, I mean, Peyton Manning and Tom Brady were like, it's kind of sprinkling. Like, we play in blizzards. Like, have you ever watched football? What are you guys talking about? Like, this is going to be fine. As long as it wasn't lightning, right? So like we had to bring up a radar that we could put on air that we were all like watching like a hawk to make sure that if lightning came within so many miles that we pulled them off the golf course. We added a lightning rod to the top of the clubhouse so that when we moved our studio talent out to the set, they weren't at risk. We had to cover the entire thing in plastic at the last minute. It was crazy. And then we get to the end and it's this great match. And, you know, Tom Brady rips his pants, which I think is all anyone remembers about the match, which is fine. Like, it was a moment. And we get to the end and we're like, guys, it's getting dark and it's not ending. Like, we're going to go play 18. It's getting dark. We have no lights. And what are we going to do? And I was like, you're going to shoot him in the dark. Like, can someone run out there with one of like our handheld lights? Like, I'm like, I don't know what you're going to do, but we're definitely not stopping now. We get to hole 18 and we're like, we've lost Tiger's mic. We've lost Tiger's mic. And I hear the saddest voice over my headset. One of our BSI guys. And he goes, I have no more equipment. Everything's ruined. They went through millions of dollars of equipment that got rained on for hours and all of it was ruined. Oh. And I was like, we made it this far, guys. Like, I consider it a win. And so I think that was my most favorite event because there will never be anything like it that we would have had to go through that many like trials to get to. I mean, television is not glamorous like most people think it is, but it's definitely not that hard. So it definitely won't be something that we ever experience ever again. And it holds a very special piece in my heart to be able to be a part of an event that was not only fun, that was not only something that people at home could just get away and watch for a little while, but something that really, really mattered. It affected people that weren't in the sports world. It affected people who were having a really hard time with COVID. They'd lost their jobs. They needed money. They needed food. And that to me was a really cool intersection of bringing people into sports that we just don't see because most of the time it's just fan base.
And it was really cool to see. I mean, you can't take TV, add a pandemic, add a storm. Like, that's a pretty wild combination. But I definitely pulled it off. And it raised a pretty good bit of money too, if I remember. I mean, it was definitely a success in that facet.
Yes, $20 million for COVID relief for various different organizations that were helping out with COVID relief at the time. Wow. And it was amazing. But yes, I don't ever want to do anything in the rain ever again. Definitely not.
Well, I know that something you're passionate about is getting more women into the sports field. And, you know, I know in the past couple of years, we've had more, I think just because it's seen as a male dominant industry, but it doesn't have to be. And so if to any women watching this, what would kind of be your message to them about, hey, get in the sports world?
I think it's really intimidating, and I think it's okay to be intimidated. I think that's the first thing. I think a lot of pressure is put on every time you open your mouth, you have to say the right thing, or you can never be wrong, or you have to be the fastest, you have to be the smartest, you have to have the most ideas, you have to have the best ideas in order to just keep up with the men that are already in the room that are doing fine at a like more basic level. And I think that pressure sometimes can be overwhelming, and it's okay to be intimidated by them, but you still just have to be yourself and know that in a lot of situations, it's okay to fail. It's okay to be able to look at your boss and be like, wow, that was a bad idea and I really screwed that one up. But here's how we're going to do it differently in the future. This is what I learned from it. This is how it's not going to happen again. Whatever those pieces are from it, I think that sometimes we forget because we get so intimidated walking into a room that you have to be perfect all the time. And so you can't make mistakes. And then sometimes you forget to just look at the whole picture, or you forget to look at why are you doing something? Does this enhance the broadcast? That's like my boss's favorite question. Whenever you come to him with an idea that he's not so sure about, he's like, but why? Like, why do we want to do this? Why is this important? Why does this make it funnier? Why does this make it better? Why does this make it, you know, Instagram worthy, right? Everything has to hit Instagram and Twitter in order to be validated by fan bases a lot of the time. A lot of the time, it's not necessarily what hits the actual show on television. And so I think that you just have to take a deep breath a lot of times when you go into a room like that. I currently am the only female on my team. And sometimes it can be really hard to constantly sit in a room full of people and nobody looks like you. And nobody has the same experiences and nobody has the same ideas, or maybe they think that that's stupid because they're so used to doing it one way. But I think that we are now at an intersection of culture where people are paying attention, where that matters, where that's important, where me being different, it actually means I'm the person most people want to talk to in the room because I have different experiences and I have different opinions and I have different, I mean, even down to my journey through the sports world, everyone that I work with has had the exact same path, except for me. I'm the only one that came from the technical side. So there are a lot of times when we're talking about an event and my boss only wants to talk to me. He's like, well, where's this going to go? And how is this going to fail here? And, you know, we were at the award show and we had a breakdown with our new master control system. And every time we would come back from commercial, it would add 7 seconds of black and then like cut into the show. Nobody could figure out what was wrong with it. My boss is like, what do we do? And I was like, we have technical VPs here. Like, I'm not sure, ask them. But like, that was the moment when I realized, like, hold on a second. You matter in this room. You might not matter at all the times you want to matter, but nobody does. And that's okay. But sometimes it really is just you, and they are going to look at you. And, you know, the push for women's content right now, I sit in so many rooms where literally every head turns and looks at me. And I'm like, just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I'm the all knowing woman sports but at the same time, they're like, they'll admit, they're like, we're out of our comfort zone. We're out of what we know. We can help us show us the research, show us the people, show, whatever that looks like. That I think now is the time for women to get in and have a little bit of an easier transition to get in. And so I would tell them all to try it. Just try it. Just see how it works. Not every company is going to be your cup of tea. Not every group, not every boss, but that's true if you were like an accountant or a doctor or whatever, like that's true across all industries, but try it, because I think most people would be surprised how much it has changed and how much it has opened to a lot of diversity, especially right now.
For sure. This has definitely been a time for change, and it's definitely needed too.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So I kind of have been asking everybody this too, and it doesn't have to be just one specific moment. But when you think about your time at WEP, do you have either a game or one memory that will always stick out to you?
Oh, that's tough. I have a few, but for very different reasons. I think my biggest one, though, was the first game I did on the new video board as a TD. It was Mississippi State. And I remember coming in that morning and there was something messed up. And I had been there, like, I'd gone home and gotten like 4 hours of sleep the night before because I'd been going through everything, triple checking everything. And I walk in and I couldn't figure something out. And Michael was like, go outside, walk around the building. I don't care what you do, but get out of this room and you'll figure it out. And I'm like, no, this has to be fixed before we do rehearsals. And he's like, get out of here, leave. Like, this isn't working. Just go take a walk down to the stadium and walk back. I don't care what you do. Just get out of here. And I did. I went outside and took a walk. And it was the first time that someone had removed me from a work position in order to figure something out for work. And I think that it taught me a lot moving forward because sometimes you have to be able to put things down for a minute. Sometimes you have to be able to have a work-life balance, if you will, and just kind of push it all aside and push it out of your mind and be like, yes, I have these 6 things to do, but today's not the day to do them. I'm not getting anything done. I just need to go do something for me. And I think that that was a really valuable lesson that I think a lot of people at War Eagle Productions sometimes found themselves in. Like, when you would get really frustrated, we would all kind of take a step away instead of like trying to just fight through like whatever was going on. And I remember doing that game and it was quote unquote what a TD would consider perfect, right? Like no mistakes, no issues, whatever. And I never had another one. And I remember being so proud at the end. I was so excited. And Michael looked at me and he's like, it's never going to happen again. So just be prepared for that. Like, you set the bar real high off the start. And it's okay that it doesn't happen again, right? Things go wrong in television. It happens all the time. But I think that those were the moments that stood out to me. It wasn't the games. It wasn't, I mean, I was a part of the 2013 Iron Bowl. Like, yeah, those were great moments. But I think what I learned from the people stuck with me a lot longer than the feeling of winning a football game did.
Goodness.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think I still do it. I'm like, I can't figure this out.
Sure.
I got to move on. Like, I got to figure something out.
I'm gonna go play a quick nine holes of golf real quick, come back and maybe figure it out.
Yeah. Sometimes it's a nap. I remember signing days. Sometimes everybody just needed a nap. Everybody would get a little grumpy, and it was like, all right, just go find your corner of the office and go to sleep for 30 minutes. I'll come get you when it's time to go back on air.
I've tried to block out signing day. I've just blocked them out.
Do you guys still do it?
We haven't done we haven't done the 6-hour show since. We've done a couple of different shows. I assume with the new football performance center, we will bring them back. But so I'll never forget the first signing day show. I had just started Expression. And so I'm like, I want to get every opportunity I can. Well, they go, hey, if you come in for the signing day show, we might try to get you on. Okay, great. What time do I need to be here? 3:30. Oh, PM? No, morning. I'm like, oh, well, I show up and we were on from 6 to 12. I think I got on at 11:45 and I was like, oh my gosh. But yeah, signing day, I block out.
That's fair.
Yeah. I can't think about those times anymore. Again, thank you for doing this though.
Sure.
When we were thinking about this, it's like, well, you can't talk to anybody else but Morgan to get a true like how well prepared. No, but seriously, I mean, you're doing the match, you're doing inside the NBA, so we had to talk to you. So I just thank you for doing it.
Of course. And if you guys ever come across people that do want to talk to someone, I meet random people for coffee. I mean, it's virtual coffee now, but it'll be normal coffee soon all the time, because I think that there's a little bit of a lack of that connection when it comes to people graduating college, right? Like, I think a lot of us found it through War Eagle Productions, or we found it through an internship, or we found it through somebody knew that somebody introduced us to down the way, whatever that was. And I feel like we could do a better job of kind of like helping people out of the college, like that's the hardest step you're ever going to take in your career. Even if you get fired from somewhere, like the hardest step is getting that first job out of college. And I think that will always be true. And so I feel like if people can take that step or just talk to someone that understands what they're going through or had a similar experience or whatever it is, it makes it easier for them to take that step and get out as well. And so I always tell people, I did an event for Turner and they said, you know, what is your goal? And I said, well, I think I have two. And I think the first one is when someone asks me for a favor, like tickets or whatever, an autograph, whatever it is, to be able to do it. I was like, I feel like that's when you know you've made it in the sports world. Can't do that yet. So I was like, that's the first one. But I think the second one is for someone to come behind me and their path be easier than mine. And mine hasn't been that hard. I've been really lucky and I've worked really hard, but I still feel like it could just be a little bit easier sometimes. And I think people could be a lot more successful if they felt like there was someone above them that was just kind of pulling them along with them, so that sometimes the hard days don't seem as hard. People don't give up. People don't want to leave as fast, whatever that answer is. And so I hope that there comes a point when I can do that for somebody else.
Well, you've definitely helped me through my career. Not just starting to teach me on TD, but the countless advice throughout. So I appreciate it.
Of course. Now you have a higher title than me. Like, you should be really patting ourselves on the back, taking partial credit for it. It's fine.
All right. Well, again, Morgan, thank you. And of course, War Eagle.
War Eagle.